The competing repair shop said the car was beyond repair, he told the unemployed mechanic. Morning arrived in Guadalajara with that dry heat that makes the asphalt vibrate. Miguel Santana walked down Federalismo Avenue with his hands in the pockets of his worn overalls, the same ones he had worn for 15 years at Don Esteban's repair shop. But Don Esteban had died 6 months earlier, and his children had sold the business to a chain of express repair shops that had no need for old-school mechanics. Miguel was 42 years old with an impeccable reputation and no job. The building in front of him was a skeleton of what it once was. Rodriguez Auto Repair Shop, read the rusty sign hanging crookedly above the entrance. The dirty windows barely let in any light, and in the front yard was an abandoned Nissan Suru with its hood open like a mouth waiting to be fed. Miguel had heard that the owner, a man named Rodriguez, was looking for someone, although rumor also had it that the old man barely had enough money to keep the lights on. He pushed the metal door open, and the creak echoed in the empty space. The smell of burnt oil and metal hit his nose, a familiar aroma that brought back memories of better times. The interior was chaotic, with tools scattered across the cracked concrete floor, a hydraulic lift that hadn't seemed to work since the 1990s, and in the back, next to a rickety desk, a man in his 60s was frowning as he looked over some papers. "Mr. Rodriguez," Miguel asked, stepping over the puddles of oil. The man looked up. His face was weathered from decades spent under the sun, and his hands were stained with grease that never quite came off. His gray eyes evaluated Miguel from head to toe. "Are you here for the job?" he asked in a raspy voice. "Yes, sir. My name is Miguel Santana. I worked for Don Esteban for 15 years at I know Don Esteban. He was a good man." Rodriguez put down his papers and leaned back against the desk. "Look, kid, I'm going to be honest with you. This place is falling apart. I'm up to my neck in debt. I can barely pay you minimum wage. And customers, well, there aren't many customers anymore. The big chains are eating up the market." Miguel nodded. He had heard the same story a dozen times. In recent months, independent repair shops were dying, crushed by industrial efficiency and the competitive prices of franchises. "I understand the situation, sir, but I'm a good mechanic. I can help you." The roar of an engine interrupted his words. A dark blue Volkswagen Jetta pulled into the shop with a metallic noise that made Miguel frown immediately. The car stopped with a final whine from the engine, and a man of about 35 dressed in a white shirt and dress pants got out of the driver's seat. His expression was one of pure frustration. "Are you Rodriguez?" he asked without greeting. "Yes, sir," replied the old mechanic, straightening up. The man pointed to his car with a broad gesture of exasperation. "I took my car to the premium repair shop in Lopez Mateos. Do you know that place? It's huge, very modern, with computers and everything. I paid $3,000 for the diagnosis, and you know what they told me?" Rodriguez and Miguel exchanged a glance. "The competing repair shop said the car was beyond repair," the customer continued, his voice rising. "And they told me the engine is shot, the transmission is ruined, that I should just sell it for scrap. But this car has only 80,000 kilometers on it. I bought it 3 years ago. It can't be dead." Miguel approached the Jetta. The noise he had heard was characteristic, something he had diagnosed hundreds of times. He bent down and ran his hand under the car. Then he checked the oil level. His fingers were stained with a dark, thick liquid. "Can I check the engine, ma'am?" he asked. The customer looked at him suspiciously. "Who are you, Miguel Santana?" "I'm here to work," he said, looking at Rodriguez, who nodded slightly. "Go ahead," said the customer, crossing his arms. Miguel opened the hood completely and studied the engine. The hoses were in poor condition, there were obvious leaks, and the alternator showed signs of severe wear, but the engine itself was not burned out. He plugged in an inspection lamp and crawled under the car, moving with the familiarity of someone who has done this 1,000 times. 5 minutes later, he emerged with a discreet smile. "Your engine isn't blown," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "You have a problem with the cooling system. The thermostat is stuck, and that's causing the engine to overheat. The noise is coming from the engine mounts, which are worn out, and the transmission just needs an oil change. None of this is terminal." The customer blinked. "Are you sure? The guys at the other shop showed me graphs on the computer." "Computers are useful," Miguel replied, "but sometimes you have to get your hands dirty and see for yourself. Your car can be fixed." It's going to cost you, but it's not junk. Rodriguez approached, studying Miguel with new attention. The customer seemed torn between relief and anger. How much would it cost to fix it? He finally asked. Miguel looked at Rodriguez, waiting for him to answer. The old mechanic cleared his throat. Give me a day to make a detailed estimate, he said. But I can tell you in advance that it will be less than what that shop charged you for telling you lies. The customer nodded slowly. All right, I'll call you tomorrow. And if this works, he paused, I'll recommend you to everyone I know. When the customer left, Rodriguez turned to Miguel. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of a rusty fan in the corner. The job is yours if you want it, he finally said. But I have to warn you, this is going to be difficult. Not just fixing cars. We're going to have to rebuild a reputation, compete against giants, and do it with almost nothing. Miguel looked around the noisy workshop. Then his eyes fell on his own oil-stained hands. He thought of his wife Laura, who worked double shifts at a coffee shop to keep the house afloat. He thought of the bills piling up during sleepless nights, wondering how much longer they could hold out. I accept, he said simply. Rodriguez extended his hand, and when Miguel shook it, he felt the firmness of someone who still believes in something. Then let's get to work, said the old mechanic. We have a Jetta to fix and a reputation to rebuild. Miguel arrived at the workshop at 6 a.m. the next day. The sun was just rising over the buildings of Guadalajara, painting the sky orange and pink. He had slept little, his mind racing over the diagnosis of the Jetta and calculations of how much the parts would cost. Rodriguez was already there, sweeping the shop floor with slow but determined movements. Early bird, commented the old mechanic, without stopping his sweeping. Habit, replied Miguel, leaving his lunchbox on the desk. I already spoke to the Jetta customer. He's coming at 10. I gave him a quote of 7,000 pesos. That includes the thermostat, 3 engine mounts, transmission oil change, 2 new hoses, and labor. Rodriguez stopped and stared at him. That leaves us with a profit of 100. If there are no complications. Miguel nodded. It was a fair margin, neither excessive nor so low that it would leave them at a loss. At the premium repair shop, they would probably have charged double plus the diagnostic fee they had already charged. That was precisely their advantage. Honestly, we need to get the parts before he arrives, Miguel said. He has reliable suppliers. Rodriguez let out a dry laugh. He used to. Most of them now only work with the big chains because they guarantee volume. But I know someone in the supply market who can get us original parts at a good price. They spent the morning organizing the workshop. Miguel cleaned and sorted the tools, identifying which ones were usable and which ones were so worn out that it was dangerous to use them. The hydraulic lift was broken, as he had suspected, which meant that all the work would have to be done with jacks and ramps. It wasn't ideal, but it was possible. At 10 o'clock sharp, the blue Jetta pulled into the workshop. The customer, who introduced himself as Ricardo Mendoza, was accompanied by his wife, a sharp-eyed woman who immediately began to inspect the place with visible skepticism. This place is very different from the other workshop, she commented, not hiding her doubt. Big places have appearances, Rodriguez said calmly. Here we have experience. Ricardo exchanged a glance with his wife. We're thinking about the budget. 7,000 pesos is still a lot of money for us. Miguel understood the hesitation. In Mexico, 7,000 pesos was almost a month's minimum wage. For a middle-class family, it was a considerable amount. I understand your concern, Miguel said. That's why I want to show you exactly what we're going to do. He led the couple to the car and pointed out each component that needed replacement, explaining in simple terms what each part did and why its failure was causing the symptoms they had experienced. I'm not going to lie to you. If you don't fix this soon, the engine will eventually burn out. But right now, it can still be saved. Ricardo's wife leaned over to look at the stuck thermostat that Miguel had removed as an example. And the other shop? Why did they say it couldn't be fixed? Rodriguez, who had remained silent, finally spoke up. Because they make more money selling new cars than fixing old ones. They have agreements with dealerships. If they convince you that your car is dead, you buy a new one and they get a commission. The silence that followed was heavy. Ricardo clenched his jaw, his face reddening. Those bastards, he muttered. I paid 3,000 pesos for that diagnosis, And it was probably a lie from the start, Miguel added softly. Look, we can't give you that money back, but we can fix your car and guarantee that it will work. If you have any problems with the parts we replace within 30 days, we'll fix it for free. Ricardo and his wife looked at each other again, and this time Miguel could see that something had changed in their expressions. The mistrust had turned into something closer to hope. How long will it take? Ricardo asked. If we get the parts today, it'll be ready tomorrow afternoon. Okay, said Ricardo, taking out his wallet. Oh, but I need a formal receipt. No payments without paperwork. Of course, said Rodriguez, heading to the desk to prepare the contract. When the couple left, leaving the Jetta and a down payment of $3,500, Rodriguez counted the bills with trembling hands. He hadn't seen that much cash in 2 months, he admitted. Let's go get the parts. The trip to the supply market was an eye-opening experience for Miguel. Rodriguez's contact was a man named Arturo, who operated out of a small but well-stocked shop among the labyrinth of stores. Arturo was one of those characters who knows everyone and can get it anything if the price is right. Rodriguez, the old bastard, greeted Arturo with a smile. I thought you were dead. Not yet, Rodriguez replied. I need parts for a 2019 Jetta. The negotiation was intense. Arturo started by asking for prices that would have eliminated any profit, but Rodriguez knew the game. After 20 minutes of haggling, they left with all the necessary parts for 4,000 pesos, still leaving them a reasonable profit margin. Back at the shop, Rodriguez drove his old truck with a thoughtful expression. Do you know why my business went bankrupt the first time? He asked suddenly. Miguel, who was checking the parts in the passenger seat, looked up. No, sir, because I got greedy. I started overcharging, using cheap parts, lying to customers about what they really needed. For a while, I made a lot of money. He paused, his hands clenching the steering wheel. But customers aren't stupid. Eventually, they figured it out, stopped coming, and I was left alone. I lost my reputation, and in this business, that means losing everything. And now, Miguel asked, now I'm broke, and this is probably my last chance to make things right. Rodriguez looked at him briefly before turning his gaze back to the road. That's why I hired you. I saw how you talked to that customer. You didn't try to impress him. You didn't lie to him. You just told him the truth. That's what we need. Miguel felt the weight of those words. It wasn't just a bomb, it was a chance to prove that there was still room for honesty in a world that seemed to reward the opposite. They spent the rest of the day working on the Jetta. Miguel immersed himself in the work with the concentration of a surgeon. Every screw he removed, every part he replaced, he did with meticulous care. Rodriguez watched him occasionally, offering a suggestion or passing him a tool, but mostly letting him work. When the sun began to set, bathing the workshop in golden tones, Miguel closed the Jetta's hood and turned the key. The engine started with a soft purr without the metallic noises it had made before. He left the car running for 20 minutes, monitoring the temperature, listening to every sound. It's fine, Rodriguez said, and there was something like pride in his voice. Miguel smiled as he wiped the grease from his hands. For the first time in months, he felt something he had forgotten. The satisfaction of a job well done. We'll deliver it tomorrow, he said, and then we'll see what happens. That night, Miguel arrived home in the sanitary neighborhood later than usual. Laura was in the kitchen preparing dinner. When she saw him come in, her tired expression softened. How did it go? She asked. Miguel sat down at the table and told her everything. The workshop, Rodriguez, the Jetta, the promise to do things differently. Laura listened quietly, and when he finished, she came over and took his hands. It sounds risky, she said finally. It is, Miguel admitted, but it's better than doing nothing. Laura nodded slowly. Then I support you, but promise me something. Don't let them take advantage of you. You know your worth, I promise, said Miguel, and kissed her on the forehead. They didn't know then that the blue Jetta would be just the beginning, that the decision they made that day would lead them down a path full of challenges that would test not only their skills, but their integrity and their determination to change the rules of the game. Ricardo Mendoza returned to the workshop the next day at 5 p.m., just as the sky began to take on the violet hues characteristic of Guadalajara sunsets. He came alone this time, with an expression of barely contained anxiety. Miguel greeted him with the Jetta keys in his hand. It's ready, he said simply. Start the engine and listen. Ricardo turned the key and the engine roared to life with a clean, almost new sound. He sat there, gently accelerating, listening, waiting to find some defect. After 5 minutes, he got out of the car with teary eyes. I can't believe it, he murmured. It sounds better than when I bought it. We also changed the air filter and spark plugs at no additional cost, added Rodriguez, handing him the bill. They were in poor condition. Compliments of the house. Ricardo read the document, checking each line. When he got to the total, his expression was one of genuine surprise. Exactly 7,000 pesos, not a peso more. A deal is a deal, Miguel said. Ricardo took out the remaining money, and as he counted it, his phone began to ring. He answered without moving far away, and Miguel could hear snippets of the conversation. Yes, they already delivered it to me. No, seriously, it's perfect. A workshop in Federalismo. It's called Rodriguez. Yes, I'll give you the address. When he hung up, Ricardo had a big smile on his face. It was his brother-in-law. His truck was making a strange noise, and the repair shop he went to wanted to charge him 20,000 pesos. Can you take a look at it? Sure, Rodriguez replied. Have him come in tomorrow. But Ricardo's brother-in-law didn't wait until tomorrow. He arrived that same night in a red Chevrolet with a bearing noise that Miguel identified before the truck came to a complete stop. The diagnosis took 15 minutes, and the estimate to replace the damaged bearing was 3,500 pesos, less than a fifth of what he had been quoted elsewhere. I'll see you on Monday, said the brother-in-law, leaving his contact information. It was Thursday, and by Friday at noon, they had received 3 more calls. By Saturday morning, there was a line of 4 cars waiting for diagnosis. Miguel arrived at the shop and found Rodriguez sitting at his desk watching the scene with a mixture of joy and concern. This is good, Miguel said, assessing the vehicles. It's too much, Rodriguez replied. We can't handle them all with just the 2 of us, and I don't have the money to hire more people. Miguel rubbed his chin, thinking. He was right. If they started turning away customers or taking too long to make repairs, they would lose the momentum they were gaining. But the solution was not obvious. How about we work longer shifts, Miguel suggested, and prioritize according to urgency and repair time. At my age, I can't be here 16 hours a day, Rodriguez admitted with a tired laugh. Then I'll do it, Miguel said. You take care of the mornings, administration, and quotes. I'll work the afternoons and the more complex repairs, and on Saturdays we'll work together on the most urgent cases. Rodriguez studied him with that penetrating gaze that Miguel was beginning to recognize. I'll pay you 50% more for the extra hours. That's not necessary. Yes, it is, interrupted the old mechanic. Honesty doesn't just work with customers. It works between us too. If you're going to work more, I'll pay you more. Nayan. Period. They implemented the system. That same day, Miguel served customers with the patience of someone who understands that a car is not just a machine, but an important investment and often a vital necessity. He explained each diagnosis in detail, showed the damaged parts, and offered alternatives when possible. Not all cases were as straightforward as the Jetta. The third car in line, a 2010 Honda Accord, had electrical problems that turned out to be a nightmare of corroded wires and blown fuses. Miguel spent 6 hours tracing the source of the problem until he found that a mouse had made a nest inside the dashboard, chewing through the wiring in the process. The owner admitted he had never seen anything like it and showed Miguel the remains of the nest and the damaged wires. It happens more often than you think, Miguel replied, especially if you park your car near trees or vacant lots. The repair was laborious and required redoing part of the electrical harness, but Miguel quoted a fair price, 500 for materials and labor. The customer, expecting to pay twice as much, accepted immediately. By Sunday, Miguel was exhausted but satisfied. They had completed 7 jobs in 3 days, all delivered on time and with satisfied customers. When he checked his phone, he found several messages from Lorabam asking if he was okay. He replied with a photo of the workshop, now tidier, with several cars in various stages of repair. We're growing, and he wrote. Laura's response was immediate. Don't kill yourself working. I need you alive. Miguel smiled, but he knew she was right. The pace was unsustainable in the long run. They needed help. On Monday morning, while Miguel was inspecting a Mazda 3 with transmission problems, he heard a familiar voice. Miguel Santana, I can't believe it's you. He turned around and found himself face to face with Omar Villalobos, a colleague from Don Esteban's old workshop. Omar had been one of the best automotive electricians Miguel had ever known, with a special talent for diagnosing problems that others couldn't solve. Omar, Miguel said in surprise, what are you doing here? Looking for work, Omar replied with a wry smile. I got kicked out of the chain shop. They said I was too slow, that I didn't meet the daily service quotas. Apparently, taking my time to do things right doesn't fit with their business model. Miguel and Rodriguez exchanged a glance. How much were they paying you? Rodriguez asked directly. Omar named a figure. It was low for someone with his experience. I can pay you the same to start, Rodriguez said. But as the income grows, so do you. And there are no quotas here. Just a job well done. Omar didn't think twice. When do I start? Now, Miguel replied, pointing to the Mazda. This one has problems with the transmission control module. Do you want to check it out? With Omar on the team, the dynamics of the workshop changed. His experience in electrical systems perfectly complemented Miguel's mechanical skills. And Rodriguez could finally focus on management without worrying about jobs falling behind. In 2 weeks, they had completed 23 repairs, and the waiting list was starting to extend to a week. But growth brought its own problems. One Wednesday afternoon, while Miguel was working on changing the clutch on a Seat Ibiza, a black BMW pulled up in front of the workshop. Two men in suits got out of the vehicle, both with expressions that did not bode well. Who's the owner? Asked the taller one without greeting. Rodriguez came out of his office, wiping his hands on a rag. I am. How can I help you? I am Mr. Garza, said the man, taking out a business card. I represent Premium Workshops. We have received information that you are spreading false information about our services. Miguel approached, with Omar right behind him. We haven't spread anything, Rodriguez said calmly. We're just doing our job. You have several customers who used to be ours, Garza continued. Customers who are saying on social media that we deceive them, that our diagnoses are fraudulent. That's defamation. We don't control what our customers say, Miguel interjected. If they're upset with you, there must be a reason. The second man, who hadn't introduced himself, stepped forward. Look, we can make this easy or difficult. Talleres Premium is part of a very large business group. We have lawyers, influence. We can have this little shop shut down with a simple health inspection. Are you threatening us? Omar asked dangerously. We're warning you, Garza corrected. Limit your advertising. Don't accept any more customers who come from our workshops, and definitely don't say anything about our working methods. Rodriguez looked at them silently for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was firm. Leave my property now. Garza smiled without humor. You're going to regret this. After they left, the workshop fell silent. Miguel could feel the tension in the air, the awareness that they had crossed an invisible but important line. Can they really shut us down? Omar asked. If they find a violation. Yes, Rodriguez admitted. And if they look hard enough, they'll always find something. This place isn't in perfect condition. Then we'll make it perfect, Miguel said with determination. Before they come to inspect, Rodriguez nodded slowly. It's going to cost money we barely have. Then we'll work harder, Miguel replied, because backing down is not an option. That night, the three men stayed up past midnight, making a list of everything that needed to be improved. Updated permits, certified fire extinguishers, safety signage, ventilation improvements, drainage repairs. The list was long and expensive, but as they worked, Miguel felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of shared purpose, the certainty that they were building something worth defending. The battle was just beginning, but they were no longer alone. The inspection came exactly 1 week after Mr. Garza's visit. Miguel was working on an oil change for a Nissan Frontier when two municipal inspectors entered the workshop with clipboards and bureaucratic expressions that revealed nothing. Rodriguez greeted them with professional courtesy, knowing full well that this was not a routine visit. Good morning, gentlemen. Allow me to show you our updated permits, he said, leading them to his office. Miguel and Omar exchanged tense glances but continued working. The previous week, they had invested every available peso in getting the workshop in order. Omar had personally installed 4 new fire extinguishers at strategic points. Miguel had repaired the drainage system and improved the ventilation. Rodriguez had renewed all expired permits, a process that had taken him days of paperwork and cost him almost $20,000. The inspector spent 3 hours checking every corner of the workshop, measuring distances between equipment and verifying that chemicals were stored correctly. They inspected the electrical installations. Miguel watched them out of the corner of his eye as he worked, noticing how one of them photographed absolutely everything, even details that seemed irrelevant. "Mr. Rodriguez," the chief inspector finally called out, a man in his 50s with a gray mustache. "There are a few observations." Miguel's heart sank. Rodriguez left the office with a neutral expression. "Tell me, the hydraulic lift is not working and poses a potential risk. It needs to be repaired or removed completely." The inspector paused, reviewing his notes. "The emergency exit signs are faded and need to be replaced, and emergency eyes need to be installed near the area where acids and solvents are stored." Rodriguez nodded, taking notes. "Anything else? You have 15 business days to correct these observations." "We will return to verify." The inspector handed him an official document. "If they are not corrected, we will proceed with temporary closure until you comply with the regulations." When the inspectors left, Rodriguez dropped the paper on his desk and slumped into his chair. "The elevator will cost 40,000 pesos to repair," he said wearily. "The eye wash stations, another 5,000. The signage, 2,000. "We don't have that kind of money. We can get a loan," Omar suggested. "I'm already in debt," Rodriguez replied. "No bank will lend me any more." Miguel sat down on a stool, thinking. They had made money in recent weeks, but it had all gone to pay off overdue debts, buy essential tools, and obtain permits. They were barely staying afloat. "What if we ask our customers for advance payments?" Omar suggested. "That might work in some cases," Miguel's admitted, "but it's not enough to raise 47,000 pesos in 2 weeks. Silence spread between them, heavy as lead. Outside, the Guadalajara sun continued to shine relentlessly, oblivious to their problems. The workshop phone rang, breaking the moment. Rodriguez answered in a monotone voice, but gradually his expression changed. "Yes, sir, I understand. When Perfecto, we'll be waiting for you here." When he hung up, there was a strange gleam in his eyes. It was Sergio Dominguez. Remember the Accord with the cables chewed by mice? It turns out that Sergio is the purchasing manager for a transportation company. He has a fleet of 15 delivery trucks that need maintenance. He wants us to give him a quote to take care of the service. Omar sat up suddenly. 15 trucks. That's a lot of work, Miguel added, and potentially a lot of money if we do it right. Sergio Dominguez arrived at the workshop that same afternoon in a modest car, accompanied by his assistant, a young woman with a tablet and an analytical look. He was a man of about 45 with the practical attitude of someone who has spent years solving logistical problems. Mr. Rodriguez greeted him with a handshake. "And you must be Miguel, the one who fixed my Accord." "That's me," Miguel replied. "I'll be frank with you," Sergio began, getting straight to the point. "Our company has been working with a chain workshop for 3 years, but the service is inconsistent. Repairs take too long, and I think they're overcharging us. After what they did to my car, I want to give you the opportunity to quote for the maintenance of our fleet." Rodriguez nodded professionally. "What type of vehicles and what services do you need?" The assistant opened her tablet and began to detail 15 2018 to 2021. Transits used for urban delivery with an average of 3,000 kilometers per month each. They needed preventive maintenance every 5,000 kilometers, plus corrective repairs as they arose. "The current workshop charges us pesos for preventive maintenance per vehicle," Sergio explained. "And when there are repairs, they sometimes take up to a week, forcing us to rent additional vans. That's costing us a fortune." Miguel did some quick mental calculations. If they could do the maintenance for 1,000 pesos each without sacrificing quality and guaranteeing fast deliveries, they could win the contract. But it meant organizing the workshop in a completely different way. "Give us 2 days to prepare a proposal," Rodriguez asked. "You have 3, Sergio replied. "But I warn you, I'm not looking for the cheapest price. I'm looking for quality, reliability, and honesty. If you lie to me or fail me, the contract ends immediately. That night, the three partners stayed in the workshop until 2 a.m. designing a proposal. Miguel calculated work times, considering that they could do two maintenance jobs simultaneously if they organized the space well. Omar researched wholesale prices for common spare parts for the transits. Rodriguez designed a shift system and prepared the final numbers. The proposal they presented 3 days later was solid: 950 pesos for preventive maintenance with a guarantee of delivery within a maximum of 24 hours for corrective repairs, case-by-case quotes, but with a commitment to free diagnosis in less than 3 hours and an added value. An alert system to anticipate problems before they cause failures, based on regular monitoring of key components. It's risky, Sergio commented after reviewing the proposal. They're offering more for less money. How do I know they can deliver? Let's do a pilot, Miguel proposed. Choose the two trucks that have the most problems. We'll do a complete maintenance check on them, free of charge. If you're not satisfied, you don't owe us anything. If you are satisfied, we'll talk about the contract. Sergio looked at his assistant, who nodded slightly. All right, he agreed, but the trucks I'm sending you are the worst in the fleet. If you can handle those, you can handle them all. The two Ford Transits arrived the next day. One had an excessively vibrating engine and the other made a whirring noise in the steering. Miguel and Omar divided the work between them, with Rodriguez supervising and making sure everything was meticulously documented. The Transit with the vibrating engine had worn engine mounts and a crankshaft balance problem, indicating that the engine had been abused. The repair took 18 hours of intense work, with Miguel dismantling half the engine to access the damaged component. The second van turned out to have a simpler but potentially dangerous problem. The steering terminals were completely worn out, to the point that it was a miracle they hadn't failed completely. He replaced them, in addition to checking the entire steering and suspension system, finding and correcting two other minor problems. When Sergio returned to pick up the trucks 48 hours later, he was silent for several minutes, reading the detailed reports they had prepared. They also changed the air filters, checked the brakes, and adjusted the tire pressure. Wow, he murmured as he read. None of this was included in the basic maintenance. These are things we noticed that could cause problems, Miguel explained. We prefer to be proactive. Sergio started the first Transit. The engine purred smoothly without any vibrations. He tested the steering on the second one. Precise response. No noises. How much do I owe you, he asked. Nothing, Rodriguez replied. He was a pilot. You decide if it's worth hiring us. Sergio took out his phone and dialed a number. Maria, it's Sergio. Cancel the contract with the current repair shop. Yes, I'm sure. And prepare the new contract with Tyler Rodriguez. No, it's not negotiable. Do it. He hung up and extended his hand. You have a 1-year renewable contract and maintain this level of service. I'll pay you weekly. And the first truck for regular maintenance arrives on Monday. When Sergio left, the three men stared at the signed contract on Rodriguez's desk. It was the salvation they needed, but also a huge responsibility. With this, we can fix the lift, said Omar with something like disbelief in his voice. And hire another mechanic, added Miguel. We can't do this alone. Rodriguez nodded slowly. And when premium workshops find out, they're going to come at us with everything they've got, because we just took a big customer away from them. Miguel knew that, but for the first time in months, he felt like they had a real chance to win, not because they were bigger or had more resources, but because they had chosen to do things the right way. So, we're getting ready, he said simply. The storm was coming, but they would no longer face it empty-handed. 2 weeks after signing the contract with Sergio Dominguez, the Rodriguez workshop had undergone a transformation that Miguel could hardly believe. The hydraulic lift was repaired and certified, gleaming with new industrial paint. The emergency eye wash stations were installed. They had hired 2 more mechanics. Javier, a transmission specialist who had been fired from an agency for refusing to recommend unnecessary repairs, and Daniela, a young recent graduate of a technical school with a natural talent for modern electronic diagnostics. The shop now operated 2 full shifts. Mornings were devoted mainly to Sergio's fleet with a perfectly synchronized system where 2 trucks came in every day for maintenance while afternoons were spent serving private customers. The space, which had previously seemed too large for two people, now felt small with 5 mechanics working simultaneously. Miguel arrived that Monday at 6 a.m., as he had done every week since he started. He found Rodriguez already in his office, but this time he wasn't reviewing invoices or quotes. He was looking at his computer with a frown. "We have a problem," he said without looking up. Miguel approached and saw the screen. It was an article on a local news blog. Informal repair shops put drivers at risk. Specialists warn about mechanics without proper certification. "Let me guess," Miguel said tensely. "Premium Workshops is behind this, not just them," Rodriguez replied, scrolling through the article. "It's a whole association of chain workshops. They're pressuring the municipal government to create new regulations that would basically make it impossible for independent workshops like ours to operate." The article was technically neutral, but the bias was obvious. It cited alarming statistics on accidents caused by inadequate maintenance and interviewed experts who argued that only shops with specific corporate certifications should be allowed to operate. "How serious is this?" Miguel asked. "Very serious," Rodriguez admitted. "If these regulations pass, we would need certifications that cost more than $200,000 and would have to renew them every year. It's a way to drive us out of the market using bureaucracy." Omar arrived shortly after and read the article silently. His reaction was immediate and visceral. "It's a lie," he said, slamming his palm on the desk. "We do better work than any chain." "Our customers know that. Customers don't write the laws," Rodriguez replied wearily. "But they vote," interjected Daniela, who had entered without anyone noticing. "And they talk. They have social media." Miguel looked at her with renewed interest. "What are you thinking? That maybe we can't win on their turf, but we can change the turf?" Daniela took out her phone. "Most of our customers are happy, right? How about we ask them to share their experiences? Not aggressively, just honestly. Let people know that there are alternatives." "That could be seen as a smear campaign against the chains," Rodriguez warned. "No, if we just tell our truth," Miguel argued, "without mentioning anyone else, just showing what we do." The discussion continued over breakfast. In the end, they decided to give it a try. Daniela, who understood social media better than all of them combined, proposed creating educational content. Short videos showing real repairs, explaining what to look for in an honest mechanic, how to identify when someone is trying to cheat you. "We're not attacking anyone," Daniela laid down the rules. "We're just educating, empowering people to make better decisions." The first video was simple, Miguel explaining how to check the oil level and why it's important. They recorded it with Daniela's phone without sophisticated editing, just genuine content. They uploaded it to Facebook and TikTok without high expectations. By nightfall, it had 50,000 views and hundreds of comments. "People are hungry for this," Daniela said, reading the comments. "Look, no one has ever explained this to me so clearly. I wish I had seen this before I was ripped off. Where are you located? I need to bring my car to you." They made more videos. Omar explaining electrical systems, Javier demonstrating how to identify transmission problems, Daniela showing the computer diagnostic process. Each video emphasized the importance of honesty, a job well done, and treating customers with respect. The response was overwhelming. In 2 weeks, the workshop's waiting list grew to 3 weeks. They began receiving calls from people in other parts of Guadalajara, some even from neighboring municipalities such as Tulacapac and Zapopan. But the attention also had consequences. One Thursday afternoon, while Miguel was working on changing the clutch on a Mazda 3, 3 civil protection trucks parked in front of the workshop. 6 inspectors got out, fully equipped and with serious expressions. "We have received reports of improper storage of hazardous materials," announced the team leader. Rodriguez, who had been preparing for this since the video campaign began, responded calmly. "Of course, go ahead. All our materials are trash stored according to NOM 045 STPS standards." The inspection was thorough and deliberately intimidating. They checked every container, every label, every fire extinguisher. They photographed everything and asked questions designed to confuse. But Rodriguez had done his homework. Every document was in order, every material stored correctly, every safety procedure implemented. After 3 hours, the team leader closed his clipboard with a frustrated expression. "Everything is in order," he admitted reluctantly, but we'll be back. Surprise inspections are random. Whenever you like, Rodriguez replied with cold courtesy. When they left, the workshop erupted in restrained celebration. They had passed the test, but Miguel knew it was only the beginning. That night, as they were closing up the workshop, Rodriguez's phone rang. It was an unknown number. He put it on speaker. Taller Rodriguez. It was a male voice that Miguel recognized immediately. Mr. Garza from Talleres Premium. What do you want? Rodriguez asked directly. I have a proposal. My boss is impressed with what you've achieved. He wants to buy your workshop. He's offering 3 million pesos, and you can stay on as employees with good salaries. The workshop fell completely silent. 3 million pesos was a fortune for Rodriguez, probably more than he would earn in his entire life. No, Rodriguez finally said. Think about it, insisted Garza. Your workshop is small, operating at its limit. We have resources. We can expand it, turn it into something big. Why fight when you can win? Because it's not about making money, replied Rodriguez, his voice firmer than Miguel had ever heard it. It's about doing things right, and you don't do things right. You're making a mistake. Garza's voice hardened. The new regulations are going to pass. When that happens, you won't be able to compete. This is your last chance to come out ahead. Then I'll lose by doing the right thing, Rodriguez replied. Good night, lawyer. He hung up the phone and stared at it for a long moment. Omar was the first to speak. 3 million pesos is priceless. Miguel interrupted. What we're building here, what it means to our customers, to ourselves, is priceless. Rodriguez nodded slowly, and Miguel saw tears in the old mechanic's eyes. Thank you, he said simply. The following weeks were intense. The proposed regulations reached the local Congress, sparking debate. But something unexpected happened. Customers of Rodriguez's shop and other independent shops began to organize, writing letters, attending public hearings, and sharing their stories on social media. Sergio Dominguez, the manager of the transportation company, testified before the committee, explaining how his experience with chain shops had been consistently negative, while Rodriguez's service had been exemplary. Ricardo Mendoza, the owner of the Jetta, who was the first customer, organized an online petition that gathered 20,000 signatures in a week. The narrative began to change. Local media began to cover the story from another angle. Honest small businesses facing the monopoly attempts of large corporations. Miguel was invited to an interview on a local radio program. He had never spoken in public before, and the idea terrified him, but he accepted. Why do you think this battle is important? The host asked him. Miguel thought of Laura, who had worked double shifts for months to keep them afloat. He thought of Rodriguez, who had risked his last pesos to give him a chance. He thought of all the customers who had trusted them when no one else would. Because everyone deserves to have choices, he finally replied. Everyone deserves to be able to choose someone who treats them with honesty and respect, not just as another transaction. And if we let big corporations control everything, that choice disappears, not just for us, but for everyone. The interview went viral locally. The online comments were overwhelmingly positive. 2 months later, when the local Congress voted on the proposed regulations, they were rejected. Not by much, but it was enough. Instead, more balanced regulations were implemented that set safety and quality standards, but did not discriminate between independent workshops and chains. On the day the decision was announced, the Rodriguez workshop was full of customers and friends celebrating. Sergio brought food for everyone. Ricardo arrived with beer. Daniela live-streamed the celebration with hundreds of people commenting their support. Miguel found Rodriguez alone in his office, looking out the window at the workshop full of life. We did it, Miguel said. You did it, Rodriguez corrected him. When you walked in here 6 months ago, I was ready to give up. I thought this was the end, but you reminded me why I started this business in the first place. It was a team effort, Miguel replied. Yes, but I needed someone who believed it was worth trying. Rodriguez turned to him. I want to make you a 50-50 partner. This shop is as much yours as it is mine. Miguel was speechless. Mr. Rodriguez, this isn't charity, interrupted the old mechanic. It's justice, he added with a smile. I need someone to continue this when I'm gone, and I don't know anyone better than you. Miguel felt something break inside his chest, all the tensions and fears of the last few months suddenly releasing. He extended his hand, and when Rodriguez shook it, it was more than a business agreement. It was the recognition that they had built something real, something that would last. 6 months later, Rodriguez's workshop had expanded to a second location. They had 12 employees, 3 fleets of companies under contract, and a waiting list that stretched to a month. Daniela's educational videos had grown to an audience of 100,000 followers, and now other independent workshops were contacting them for advice on how to improve their businesses. One Saturday afternoon, while Miguel was reviewing the month's accounts, Laura walked into the workshop with a bag of tacos and a smile. "I thought you might be hungry," she said. Miguel put down his papers and hugged her. "How's the new job?" Laura had finally been able to quit her second job. She now worked in an office with regular hours, something that had seemed impossible a year ago. "Fine, boring compared to this," she replied, pointing to the bustling workshop. "You still can't believe what they've accomplished." Miguel looked around. Omar was teaching one of the new mechanics how to diagnose electrical problems. Javier was discussing with Daniela the best way to explain transmissions in the next video. Rodriguez, who now worked only part-time, supervised with that expression of paternal pride that had become increasingly common. "Sometimes," Miguel admitted, "sometimes I still feel like I'm going to wake up and all this is going to disappear." "It's not going to disappear," Laura said firmly. "They built it on something real, on honesty, hard work, and genuine care for people. That doesn't disappear." That night, after everyone had left, Miguel was alone in the workshop. He walked between the workstations, touching the tools, the lifts, the walls that were now painted and clean. He thought about the day he had first walked in here, desperate and without options. His phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. "Hi, my name is Fernanda. A friend recommended your workshop to me. The competing workshop said my car was beyond repair. Can you take a look at it?" Miguel smiled. The phrase was almost identical to the one he had heard 6 months ago, the one that had started all this. He typed his reply. "Of course, come tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll take an honest look at it and tell you exactly what it needs." He put his phone away and turned off the lights in the workshop. Outside, Guadalajara continued to buzz under the night sky. Traffic flowed along the freeway, thousands of people in their cars, each with their own stories, their own challenges. And somewhere among those thousands of lives, there was a small workshop that had learned a simple but profound lesson. That honesty is not just a moral virtue, but a competitive advantage. That doing the right thing is not the easy path, but it is the only path worth taking. And that even when giants try to crush you, if you stand firm in your principles and find others willing to stand with you, you can change the rules of the game. Miguel closed the workshop door, the sign, Rodriguez San Santana Auto Repair, shining under the streetlight. Tomorrow there would be another car to fix, another customer who needed help, another challenge to overcome. But tonight, as he walked home to where Laura was waiting for him, Miguel allowed himself something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, because he had finally found his place in the world, not as a replaceable cog in someone else's machine, but as the architect of his own destiny. And that, he realized, was the last and most important cog of all, M.